Kirk Cousins has won his first Monday Night Football game of his career after going 0-9. Of course, you hear it all the time. I don't have to remind you guys, Kirk Cousins 0-9 in Monday Night Football. Won his first Monday Night Football game. Vikings now have 3 straight divisional wins coming off of a bye after starting the season 1-5. They are 4-5 now after 3 straight divisional wins. Now the Minnesota Vikings beating the Chicago Bears 19-13. First win since 2017. The Minnesota Vikings move to 4-5 and the Chicago Bears fall to 5-5. Vikings still remain third in the division. Bears are second in the division. We will be discussing this game. We will be recapping this game. How the Bears did exactly what I thought that they were going to do. All the Bears had to do, stop Dalvin Cook. Just use all your guys to stop Dalvin Cook. Don't allow any big runs. Dalvin Cook had one big run, and it was a 14-yard run. Not huge. Not a massive run. He's had bigger runs. He had like a 40-yard run also in the game, but it was because of a holding foul. That was a great holding call, by the way. Anyways, Kirk Cousins did not play well yesterday, but we're going to be talking about how the Chicago Bears really messed this up. That offense is so bad for the Chicago Bears. Now, the Vikings defense played great yesterday. Vikings defense played the best game of the season so far, but that Chicago Bears offense is terrible. They are so bad. Now, of course, they don't have their starting 2 running backs after Tyreek Owen was out for the season. David Montgomery got injured. And anyways, they don't even have a run game in the first place, using Cordarrelle Patterson as a starting running back. Now, Cordarrelle Patterson, someone should have told Cordarrelle Patterson, if Cordarrelle Patterson put on a lot of weight, a lot of muscle weight in college, he could have been an amazing running back in the NFL. He would have been such a good running back. All of his play style works for a running back. He's just not built like a running back, but his play style is completely like a running back. He would be a top running back in the league if he was built like a running back. Now, of course, Cordarrelle Patterson is great. The Minnesota Vikings drafted him and asked too much of him. They wanted him to be an outside wide receiver that can do everything for the team. He's just not that guy. He's not. Now, he was a huge playmaker in college, of course, and he should have been a running back in college. He should have just put on the weight. Someone should have told him put on this muscle weight, and he would have been an amazing running back in the NFL. With that being said, Cordarrelle Patterson had a great game. Of course, he's still possibly the best kick returner of all time. Cordarrelle Patterson might be the best kick returner of all time. Throughout his entire career, he has been the best in the league. He is such a good kick returner. If he just was built like a running back, he would be an amazing running back as well. I like what the Chicago Bears are doing with Cordarrelle Patterson. They're using him as more as like a slot wide receiver. They're using him as a running back, of course. They're only using him as a running back because they're without their starting 2 running backs, and they're using him as a running back. I like what they're doing with Cordarrelle Patterson. It's what the Vikings should have done with him. Vikings were asking too much of him, and he went to the Chicago Bears and now is looking better with the Bears because they're using him properly. He is amazing. He now 7 touchdowns. I think I'm right. I think he has 7 kick return touchdowns, which is the most of all time. He might be the best kick returner of all time, and possibly would have been one of the best running backs in the league right now if he was built like a running back. He is so athletic. He is a great player. Thing is, he's just not built like a running back. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, the Chicago Bears did exactly what I thought that they were going to do. Hold Dalvin Cook. Just use all your guys to get Dalvin Cook. And then outside of that, you target those young corners. Just target all those young corners in the Vikings. That's all you got to do. Pick on those young corners and target Dalvin Cook. They did so well stopping Dalvin Cook that I'm surprised the Vikings won the game. Now, of course, the defense came in huge. That was a big play, of course. And then the offense passing game looked pretty good. But they did such a good job stopping Dalvin Cook. I am surprised the Vikings won the game because we haven't won a game yet this season without Dalvin Cook rushing for over 100 yards. He didn't rush for over 100 yards this game. He got close. Still gave him 30 carries. Dalvin Cook was given 30 carries, 96 rushing yards, only 3.2 yards a carry. I said if the Chicago Bears can hold Dalvin Cook to under 5 yards a carry, that Chicago Bears should win the game. That's it. If they can just hold Dalvin Cook to under 5 yards a carry, they held him to over 4 yards a carry and won the game because the Chicago Bears offense is just that bad. You could not have been in a better scenario for the Chicago Bears to win the game with the special teams doing what they did. Special teams put them in a great spot all the time. Their defense was playing great, and the offense only put up 2 field goals. Special teams put up more points than the Chicago Bears offense. They did so bad that the Minnesota Vikings won the game. It was more the Chicago Bears sucking than the Minnesota Vikings playing well. Because Dalvin Cook, you hold him to under 4 yards a carry, you should win the game. Because that Vikings offense may have a lot of playmakers, but this season so far, not looking like it. It's not looking like it because of Kirk Cousins. because he can't make big plays. Anyways, Kirk Cousins, 292 passing yards, 69% completion percentage, 100.7 QBR, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. That interception was not his fault, by the way, and I can read these stats, and it looks like Kirk had a good game. Kirk did not have a great game, but when you look at all of his games so far this 2020 season, you have to give it to him. This was his best game so far. Because this 2020 season, Kirk Cousins has played awful. If this was 2019, it would be a below average game. Because this was not a great game by Kirk Cousins. It just wasn't. Like, of course, he did throw an interception, and it wasn't his fault. That was Adam Thielen's fault. He did hit Adam Thielen for 2 touchdowns, and he played okay. I mean, he played acceptable. You have this many playmakers in the offense. He played acceptable, and totally fine with that. Totally fine with that. I feel like Kirk still made a lot of mistakes, a lot of overthrown passes, can still be a lot better. Kirk can easily improve from this game. He was very happy. You saw him very happy to win his first Monday Night Football game. It was not a great performance by Kirk Cousins, but it was good enough to give you the win because of how this defense for the Minnesota Vikings held that Chicago Bears offense. Anyways, a lot of short passes. We saw a lot of short passes yesterday. 6 receptions, 2 tight ends. Kyle Rudolph and Tyler Conklin combined for 6 receptions on 74 yards. Without Irv Smith, I think Irv Smith was injured in practice. Without Irv Smith, they had Tyler Conklin and Kyle Rudolph starting, and I was surprised they targeted them 6 times, or they did get 6 receptions. I'm not sure how many times they targeted him. I'm surprised they gave him 6 receptions because these tight ends are not Irv Smith. Irv Smith is a playmaker first and a blocker second, basically. Tyler Conklin and Kyle Rudolph are blocking tight ends first and playmaking second. That was great. Kyle Rudolph had an amazing game yesterday. Now, these refs hate Kyle Rudolph, though. They had 2 calls. There was the holding foul against Kyle Rudolph. That was definitely holding. They called holding on Kyle Rudolph, and there was definitely a hold there, but it's not good enough to call. That happens on every play. Calling that holding foul, it was there, and it's not going to be overturned, of course, but it was there, but that happens on every play. It was different from the Dalvin Cook run. I think when Tyler Conklin had a clear holding foul, that was a good call. I think it was Conklin. I might be wrong about that. But there was one that was like clear, okay, that's hold. And then the Kyle Rudolph's was not very much of a holding. And then also the fumble. His knee was down. His knee was down. You could not have had a more clear image than that. Like of course, the defender started him bobbling it, but he held possession the entire time. His knee went down, and then the ball came out. I don't know why that turned over. It ended up meaning nothing to the game anyways. It was not a game changer, so I'm not even that mad. But Kyle Rudolph's knee was down because, of course, right after that happened, Harrison Smith came through with a big interception, and the Vikings had the ball back in only 2 plays. They didn't even get 1 yard. Chicago Bears didn't get 1 yard, and the Vikings had the ball back. So that's totally fine by me. Anyways, Adam Thielen, 4 receptions on 43 yards with two receiving touchdowns. I don't think he had a great game. Of course, when you look at that, Adam Thielen, 2 touchdowns. That's great, especially against the Chicago Bears defense where he's going against Kyler Fuller. He still had the team get an interception. It went right through him, and he had a couple drop passes. I don't think Adam Thielen had a great game. Now, you look at that, 2 touchdowns, of course, that's great, especially when he's going against Kyler Fuller, who's a great corner. Still, 2 touchdowns is great by Adam Thielen, but at the same time, I don't think he had very much of a good game because he did have a few drop passes and did lead the team gave the ball to the defense, and they got an interception. Chad Beebe is an X factor for this Vikings offense. Nobody looks at Chad Beebe to be a playmaker, and they give it to him on 3rd down. I have not seen Chad Beebe drop a pass yet. He catches everything. I mean, they don't give him very many targets. Of course, he did get 2 receptions yesterday for 16 yards. He is a great slot wide receiver, and I am glad they're starting him over BC Johnson, and I am glad to see Chad Beebe playing how he is, because throughout his career, Chad Beebe, he was an undrafted free agent in 2017, I believe. Vikings did take him to the practice squad, brought him to the active roster, and now is our starting slot wide receiver. So he's really had a career, and you saw him progress. Last year, he was injured most of his career because he was our punt returner. He was a great punt returner, by the way. He was our punt returner and did get injured and was out for the whole season. I like to see him being used as much as they are using him this season. I am happy to see Chad Beebe getting receptions on just about every game. BC Johnson, he's more of an outside receiver. He's not much of a slot wide receiver. And BC did struggle with some drop passes this year. And last year he looked great filling in for Adam Thielen. This year did not look that good. And I think Chad Beebe well deserved of that slot wide receiver, that wide receiver 3 role. And he's looking really good. Justin Jefferson. He is the best all-around rookie wide receiver. You can argue there's other wide receivers that are rookie wide receivers that are better. It's probably more of a biased opinion if you're arguing that. But Justin Jefferson is the best all-around wide receiver. He can do anything you ask him to do. He can do anything you ask him to do. I do think CeeDee Lamb has better hands. I think CeeDee Lamb is a better catcher. possibly even a better route runner, and that's really what you look for in a wide receiver, of course. But Justin Jefferson, his ability to make plays after the catch and his blocking is really good. He has led to some big Dalvin Cook runs. His blocking is great, and his ability to make plays after the catch, break tackles. Justin Jefferson is the best all-around wide receiver, and I can see why Gary Kubiak liked him this much is because of that all-around playmaking ability. 8 receptions on 135 yards. That averages to, I think, around... Well, I think that averages to 16 yards a catch or something like that. He's the best all-around rookie wide receiver, and I think he should get Offensive Rookie of the Year. Of course, he won't get Rookie of the Year simply because it's a quarterback's role, and if you have Justin Herbert out there, you see Tua Tagovailoa playing now, and you have Joe Burrow out there, it's going to go to one of those quarterbacks because they are quarterbacks, so they're going to get that Rookie of the Year. But Justin Jefferson, well-deserved of this, and looking like a great rookie wide receiver, and I'm very happy to see it because we haven't had a first-round rookie wide receiver look this good in a long time, and I love to see it. Defense. This is why the Vikings won this game. This defense came up so huge. They stopped just about on every third down. They didn't allow one touchdown the entire game. Now, I know it's the Chicago Bears offense. Chicago Bears have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Vikings have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I know we have Eric Kendricks, Eric Wilson, Harrison Smith, Anthony Harris. We have pieces, but when you don't have that cornerback position locked down, your defense is not good. You need good corners. You need corners that are developed, and you have a good defense, and that's where you start with a good defense because cornerback is the most important position. Of course, you can argue edge rusher. You can argue pass rushers. If you can get to the passer and you have good corners, that's really all you need in a defense right there. I mean, linebackers are huge. Of course, Eric Wilson and Eric Kendricks are huge for the team. Harrison Smith, huge for the team. But those positions are just so much more important. Those outside corners and those pass rushers. Anyways, Harrison Smith, huge, by far the best defensive player out there that was playing. That game. I meant he was the best defensive player that game. Of course, we have Eric Kendricks. He's a lot better. And then Chicago Bears have a bunch of players also. But Harrison Smith, he had that interception, which was basically given to him. Harrison Smith has had multiple interceptions this season that were just given to him because he positions himself so well. Harrison Smith always knows where he needs to be when he needs to be there. And that's why he's always getting these easy interceptions. Anyways, that pass deflection on third down was insane. It was third and long. Might have been 3rd and 15. He clearly caught it. He was coming down with the ball. Harrison Smith smacked that down, and they forced a punt. Harrison Smith came up so big this game. And then, of course, they did blitz him on third down. He got to Nick Foles, where Nick Foles had to just throw it because it was third down, and he just threw it and forced another punt. Harrison Smith had an amazing game, and it remains one of the best safeties in the league. Is he the best? I don't think so because Jamal Adams is out there. Of course, he has been injured most of the season. We haven't seen much of him, but Harrison Smith is one of the best safeties in the league and has been his entire career. He is a future Hall of Famer. I'll say it right now. He might not be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but Harrison Smith will make it to the Hall of Fame. And then, of course, you have Eric Kendricks, Anthony Harris, and Eric Wilson outside of that who are helping these young corners. With Cameron Dantzler injured, with Mike Hughes injured, with Holton Hill injured, our starting corners were Jeff Gladney and Chris Boyd, who looked great. I love to see how Chris Boyd looks. Now, I know he's not like a starting corner or anything, but to have that depth piece on your team, who you use in special teams every game, to have that depth piece on your team, Chris Boyd looks really good out there. Jeff Gladney looks like an amazing nickel corner. I know he's a first-round draft pick, so you might not want him to be a nickel back, but he looks really good there. They were using him on the outside also. Jeff Gladney, I think, is going to have a great career with the Vikings. It might take time for him to develop. I don't expect him to be like making Pro Bowls or anything, but I think he's going to have a very good career. Jeff Gladney will. So this defense looked amazing. This defense looked great. They didn't even allow one touchdown against the Bears. They only allowed 149 total yards. That's rushing and passing. Only 149 total yards. How? On just 10 first downs. Who expected this? Now, I know it's the Chicago Bears offense, but who expected this from the Minnesota Vikings defense? We don't have Danielle Hunter. He's gone the entire season. Michael Pierce, of course, is opted out of the season. We don't have our starting 2 corners. And now you have this defense holding them to only 149 total yards. That's wild. They came up huge. This defense won the Minnesota Vikings the game. Now, when you look at the special teams, this was an awful performance by the Minnesota Vikings special teams. Entire way. There was nothing we saw from the Minnesota Vikings special teams outside of a long Dan Bailey kick where he made a field goal. Which, okay, who cares? You kind of expect that. Anyways, Terrible performance by this Minnesota Vikings by this Minnesota Vikings special teams, to the point where I'm surprised the Bears did not score very much. They only scored 3 times because of their defense and special teams. The amount of times the defense gave the Chicago Bears the balls and the special teams put the offense where they need to be just shows you, if you don't have a good offense, you can't compete. You can win games, but you can't compete if you do not have a good offense. And that's why the Chicago Bears lost. They scored 3 times, and it was all because of special teams putting them in the right spot. Of course, there was a Cordero Patterson got a touchdown, and then the defense putting him in a good spot too. The defense getting turnovers. You need a good offense if you want to compete. And this is why the Chicago Bears, I don't think, are even going to get a winning record this season. I said this some weeks ago and people disagreed with me. They said I was crazy, but that's just because they played a bunch of easy teams at the start. I don't think they're going to have a winning record by the end of the season. And that's because you need at least a good offense. Nick Foles is not a good quarterback. He's not. He looked great in the playoffs. Two runs in the playoffs, he's looked good. Outside of that, you look at the rest of his track record, he's getting paid all this money to be playing like that. Not a good quarterback. And then outside of that, of course, they don't have any run game. Even with all the running backs healthy, they don't have much of a run game. And then their wide receivers look fine. I mean, this Darnell Mooney guy's looking like he can be a solid number 2 receiver going forward. Of course, they still have Allen Robinson, their best receiver. And then they have Anthony Miller from the slot. They have good receivers right there because the Vikings only scored 2 touchdowns. They only scored two touchdowns, and that's all they needed to win the game. Terrible performance by the special teams. Actually, I forgot there was the special teams did recover a fumble, but that was because he did let go of the ball. He bobbled the ball and let go of it, and then we recovered it. So there was that, but outside of that, anyways, terrible performance by the special teams. We didn't get 1 yard from KJ Osborne the entire game. Dan Bailey, he didn't even get to make that extra point because they pressured him right away. Terrible snap. Awful performance by the special teams. And then, of course, the Cordero Patterson run. There was other runs that put the offense in a great position to score, and all they ended up with was a field goal because they have a terrible offense, and our defense looked really good. Vikings now are in the playoff race. Of course, the Vikings never were officially out of the playoff race, but we figured that they weren't going to get to the playoffs because of how the NFC's looking, how many elite teams there are in the NFC. But Vikings coming off of 3 straight divisional wins puts them 3-1 in the division, and they can get a 6th or 7th seed in the playoffs. They can't win the division. Of course, they cannot win the division, and of course, they cannot compete for a Super Bowl. But they can get to that playoffs, and we will be talking about this a lot more.